While your votes for Game 1 between Bewitched and Twilight Zone came in, you all gave Bewitched 58% of the vote. So it looks like you all agreed with me on Game 1 between Bewitched and Twilight Zone, with the final score being now, because you gave Bewitched 3 extra points in the grading, the final grade for Game 1 is Bewitched 85.2 and Twilight Zone 80. So Bewitched wins Game 1, but remember, this is a best of 7 series. So either Bewitched or Twilight Zone will need 4 wins in this series to advance in this tournament. Bewitched, however, only needs 3 more now. So we are about to get into Game 2. So I hope you will all let me know again after we go over the episodes here in Game 2 between Bewitched and the Twilight Zone.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
We are back for Game 2 between Bewitched and the Twilight Zone. We are going to start with the Twilight Zone.
Let's see you pay for your drink. In your own inimitable fashion, huh?
We're going to be talking 2 episodes again for Twilight Zone, and I feel like both episodes were on par with the pilot, which wasn't my favorite of the first 2 episodes. But it's not that it was bad, and it's not that these episodes were bad. I think the writing was strong for each of them. I just don't know if they were episodes that I could grade too high. Episode 3 was called Mr. Denton on Doomsday. It's a Western set in the Old West. So far, all 3 episodes of The Twilight Zone have been very different from each other. This one being about an old drunk in the Old West who is very down on his luck. He's kind of getting bullied, I would say, by this other cowboy guy named Dan, who makes Al Denton, the drunk, sing a song so he could give him some alcohol. It's basically a way to humiliate him.
Come on, Denton.
How dry I am. How dry I am.
And this is the third principal character of our story. Its function, perhaps to give Mr. Al Denton his second chance.
But Al has a change of fate when he finds this gun beside him after waking up kind of from his humiliation episode just to get some alcohol. And the gun seems to have a mind of its own, as when Dan sees that Al has a gun, he wants to have the old cowboy little quick draw showdown who could draw their gun the fastest. And while this is happening, Al ends up shooting Dan with the gun in the wrist or hand, and it was the gun itself. The gun then goes off again when Dan is confronting Al, and the chandelier falls on Dan. Like, the gun has a mind of its own.
It was an accident, Mr. Hoadley.
I'm gonna get this right in your stomach.
I didn't even mean to.
But this leads because Al dealt with the bully, and a lot of people don't like the guy anyway. This kind of gets Al his respect back. And that's kind of what this episode is about. It's kind of about recovering your own dignity, getting a second chance at life, gaining back your self-esteem. I think the message in this episode is what made it pretty good for me. And I think the characters as well. But where did the gun came from? Well, it came from a guy named Henry J. Fate. Yes, Mr. Fate gave this gun to Al, and he also makes potions. Al came across Mr. Fate after one of the quickest draws in the West wants to have a confrontation and a showdown with Al, now that Al is getting this reputation for his speedy draws.
You're a peddler, aren't you? Oh, yes. Dealer in everything. Henry J. Fate. And you're Al Denton. And you're running away. This is one of my potions. You might call it that, or an elixir. Either way, it'll help solve your problem, Mr. Denton.
So Mr. Fate gives Al the potion to go to the showdown, but the big twist is that the other guy, who's also very speedy at his draw, also is taking potion. They both down the potion before this and end up shooting each other at the exact same time. Which I guess you would say must have been fate, that it was a draw. Neither of them died, they just shot each other in the wrist. But they both still keep their respect because they were both the same amount of fast with their draw. But yeah, I like the character of Mr. Fate, I think, the best in this. I think that's a great concept, that Fate is an actual character. This was definitely my favorite of the two episodes we're going to be covering here today. Before we get into the next episode, I want to talk about the actual creator and writer, and he also does all the voiceovers. Rod Serling, I don't know a lot about him. I just know that he's a screenwriter, writer, producer, and so far I am enjoying his show, that is The Twilight Zone. It's not a show I ever watched much as a kid. It was on all the time, especially on holidays. I feel like there's always a New Year's Eve marathon or something. I had friends that liked The Twilight Zone growing up, but I never really gave it a chance. But so far, so good. That brings me to episode 2, though, which is called 16mm Shrine. It's about an old, faded, washed-up movie star named Barbara Jean Trenton, who's just constantly living in the past, watching her old movies on projector.
Barbara Jean Trenton, struck down by hit-and-run years, and lying on the unhappy pavement, trying desperately to get the license number of fleeting fame.
Miss Trenton? Miss Trenton!
The concept of this episode is basically that fame is fleeting and Barbara Jean Trenton can't get over the fact that she's aging. Her agent, who's a pretty great character named Danny, who's always by her side, always trying to get her away from her isolation, where she just always sits in a room all day watching her old movies. Her maid is always also worried about her. Danny tries to get her a part in a movie by an old producer named Saul, I think. And Saul has this part for her, but it's the part of a mom. It's not the main character. And Barbara doesn't want to play a mom because she refuses to believe she's old.
I think it fits you. It's not a big part, but I think it'll be a nice showcase for you.
Not big, but a nice showcase.
You play a mother.
How old a mother?
40-ish, but very vibrant, very much alive.
As opposed to what? A corpse?
She doesn't want a smaller part. I think in that instance, that's when Barbara became a very annoying character, which is probably my main problem with this episode, is that Barbara is annoying. I did enjoy the twist to this episode, though, where Barbara wishes she could go back in time to the past when she was in these old movies, wishes she could be with old co-stars again who have now died. And her wish comes true because she ends up disappearing. The maid screams when she disappears, and her agent comes home to look for her and finds that old Barbara has kind of whisked herself into a movie with her old co-stars. So Barbara kind of goes into the movie, I guess, forever, which is a kind of cool twist.
There you are, Jerry. There you are. I wish. Oh, I wish. Darling. Rose, it's so good to see you. We're all having dinner by the pool.
Harvey, please come back, Barbara.
So I thought both of these episodes were very solid. Not great by any means, but very solid television. And I think they both had great messages. You know, this one had a wish that came true, and dealing with wanting to go back into the past. Sometimes we can all wish that. Sometimes go back to a simpler time, a better time. In episode 1, dealing with fate, I ended up giving it an average after I averaged out both grades. I gave it, Twilight Zone ends up with a 76.95. Let's see how Bewitched does.
Hi, darling.
Hello, honey.
Oh, you must be dead. Did you have a hard day?
Oh, no, I often lose the agency's biggest accounts. 2 or 3 a week sometimes.
Darren, you didn't have an idea.
No, and I didn't use yours either.
Well, I thought you might in an emergency.
Well, you have almost as much faith in my lack of integrity as you have in my lack of talent.
We're going over 4 episodes of Bewitched again, starting with episode 5, which is called Help, Help, Don't Save Me, where Darren is working late at night, constantly working late on an ad campaign that he can't seem to get right. When Samantha comes up for a concept that ends up being a great idea, Darren doesn't want to use it because he thinks that Samantha's just going to use magic to get it accepted. This is another episode where I think Darren comes across as an overbearing husband that's really annoying, and I think we're starting to see, and I think it's intentional by the writers, I guess, but that Samantha loves Darren unconditionally, but Darren clearly has conditions when it comes to loving Samantha and her using witchcraft, and it kind of gets harder and harder for me to understand why Darren is so against the witchcraft. Like, it would make your life so much simpler.
I let him walk out on me, in spite of all your influence.
What do you mean by that?
I could feel you there in the restaurant, prodding and digging at my conscience.
Well, I haven't been anywhere near your conscience all day. I've been right here at home. I've vacuumed and scrubbed and cleaned, and I made dinner.
Well, big deal.
What does that mean?
Well, I've seen the way you can wham, wash, and pow, clean, and ring-a-ding up a dinner.
Well, I didn't wham, pow, or ring-a-ding up anything. These are bona fide dishpan hands.
You could have whipped that up, too, for appearance.
Are you calling me a liar?
If the shoe fits.
Darren certainly always comes across as annoying and too highly emotional of a husband for me. Yeah, so Darren looked really bad in this episode. They get into this huge fight, and Samantha even leaves for a while, and that's kind of finally what gets Darren to calm down. And Dora, of course, is talking a lot of crap about Darren, which I enjoy, about how he is basically, and Dora's kind of getting proved right. And Dora has a funny line of "I told you so" in this episode to Samantha.
My poor baby.
He called me a liar.
I know. I heard the whole thing. I don't want to say I told you so, Samantha.
Then don't.
There, dear. You just hold on to Mother and we'll go far, far away. Now, before we do, I think I'll change him into a horned toad.
Mother, please don't.
Maybe you're right. I'll make it easy for him. I think I'll leave him just as he is.
And Dora's looking righter and righter by the episode about Darren, frankly. In the end, Darren looks dumb when he finally realizes that when he pitches Samantha's campaign, it doesn't work, and it wasn't witchcraft. The next episode kind of dealt with something different, where I feel like most episodes are always centered around the relationship of Samantha and Darren, or the relationship of Endora and Samantha. This one is kind of about a neighbor a young boy, Samantha, befriends, who has an overbearing mother. The mother doesn't even want the boy to play baseball because she's so overbearing and worried about him. Samantha ends up helping the boy be a better pitcher using magic.
Well, you see what I mean. He can't play.
He's just a little slow getting started, that's all.
Once more now. Try to get it right into his target. Choke up on your back. Watch the ball, Floyd.
Well, maybe if you worked with Marshall a little bit.
Up to now, I've done everything that was humanly possible.
The best scenes in this are when Gladys and Abner are also at the game because their nephew is a baseball player and Abner's not even paying attention. I really love Abner. He's just a curmudgeon. I see a lot of myself in this old man, I guess.
Abner! Floyd is up to bat again!
Wonderful.
Well, the least you could do is look at him.
Why do I have to look at him? Don't I give him money?
But in the end, the boy ends up actually getting good at baseball by himself and doesn't need Samantha's magic anymore.
Don't do it. Let him be on his own and let the chips fall where they may.
Get me home, boys! Get me home!
Oh, he'll never make it. He just can't. I know he can't.
Sam, don't you dare!
Darren!
Did he make it? I was watching you.
Episode 3 was probably my least favorite of the bunch, even though it was a Halloween episode. And even though it had a pretty great character in Samantha's Aunt Clara, who's basically a witch who's kind of getting older and not being able to use her magic well.
Oh, my stars, Aunt Clara, what happened?
Well, I got the spell all wrong, and I got all mixed in the spell, and I got landed in the middle of the freeway.
Kopek.
I know, dear. I know. Loom.
Clara.
It's basically poking fun at like a witch getting older, like a woman getting older, and kind of developing, issues. I think Clara's developing issues with using her magic because she's old, but it does come across as very funny. But this episode in general isn't very funny. And kind of my biggest problem with Bewitched, these first 3 episodes, is that they're not that funny of episodes. And I've talked about this in the past, and I'll talk about it every time a sitcom is in a matchup. If the show's not making me laugh out loud, I do not give it as high of ratings, because it's a comedy. That's what you're supposed to do best, is actually be funny. And I don't know if these 3 episodes are very funny. This episode basically deals with a person Darren is working with on an ad, stereotyping a witch for Halloween being old and ugly with long noses. And then Samantha's with real witches named Bertha and Mary and Aunt Clara, who actually are old and ugly. So I don't really know why they're so upset with this ad campaign.
At just about this time of year, somebody should... What's that?
It's a Halloween witch for a billboard.
You're going to use that picture?
Well, it's not quite finished yet. I thought I'd put another wart. Here.
Darren, how could you?
But basically, the whole concept of this episode, the witches are upset because they're a minority group. And they go and haunt the guy, and it's just cheesy and not funny.
How about...
Very much to the point. Now, let's see. How about this one? Wonderful.
What are you doing up there?
Just read the signs, Mr. Brinkman.
Not a big fan of this episode. It does kind of get saved by the next episode, though, which is called Witcher Wife. This was definitely the funny of the four, in my opinion. The most funniest of the four, which deals with Darren once again having a big workload. And this is leaving Samantha to try and amuse herself at home. Her mother comes to visit and wants her to pop into Paris with Endora. But the reason Darren is working late nights is because his boss went out of town to Paris on vacation with his wife. And while Samantha and Endora use magic to pop up in Paris, they run into Darren's boss and his wife. And a lot of hilarity does ensue in that episode.
Samantha doesn't seem quite herself tonight, does she?
Oh, for goodness sakes, Larry. She's still a bride, and this is her first separation. Isn't that right, Endora?
I imagine she's very lonesome for Donald. I beg your pardon?
You mean Darren?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
I've got a great idea. Let's phone Darren and tell him what's happened.
Darren, I was wondering how late you're going to have to work tonight.
Pretty late, I'm afraid, honey. Bear with me another day, huh? I should have the work cleaned up by then.
Oh, I understand, dear.
Thanks.
Hello?
Hello? Who's this?
This is Samantha.
Samantha?
Yes, who's this?
Is this 555-7328?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Larry Tate is calling you from Paris, France.
Oops. Larry just thought he spoke to you on the phone. Me? We have a surprise for you, haven't we?
Oh, yes, a beauty.
Larry, how are you?
Fine. Have I got a surprise for you? You'll never guess who's sitting next to me right here in Paris.
Samantha.
Go on.
When
Talk to your husband.
Sam,
He's all yours. Go on, Samantha. Dan's on the other end.
Oh, Sam, where? How? Where are you right at the...
Darren? Oh, hi, darling. It's Samantha.
Sam, how did you... When did...
Oh, yes, I'm having a wonderful time.
Sam, when? How?
Oh, well, I just can't wait to get home and tell you all about my trip.
Overall, these 4 episodes of Bewitched were okay, but the biggest flaw is that they weren't that funny to me. And so I didn't give it as high of grades as I did the first 4 because of that. It's a big thing when I'm going to be grading sitcoms on this channel for this tournament. Sitcoms got to be funny. They got to make me laugh out loud. And most of these episodes didn't, but it still ended up with a pretty good average of a 75.35. So with my grading, Twilight Zone is ahead of Bewitched by only about 1.5 points. And now it's your turn to vote. I hope y'all are watching along with me, and you will vote in the comments or vote in the poll I put up on the channel, but the poll will only be up for 24 hours. So you can vote in the comments, though, for up to 5 days. I will count your vote. We are doing episode 5 through 8 for Bewitched versus episode 3 and 4 for Twilight Zone. If you want to watch along with me and vote below for which show was the better of the 2, please do, and we will continue this tournament. The results will come in next week for Game 2 of Twilight Zone versus Bewitched.